This isn't your average home streaming device. This is the Revolution PlayerPro 8K TV. It costs around $2,000, weighs 10 kilos, and somehow packs a Toyota transformer, dual hard bay drives, dual HDMI outputs, dual HDMI inputs, Android TV, and support for Dolby Vision, HDR10+, Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, AV1, and 8K at 60 frames per second. And depending on where you buy it, you're looking at roughly 1,699 euros in Europe or $1,999 in the US. So the big question here is obvious. Who is this actually for? And just to be fully transparent, Revolution sent me this player for free to review, but they aren't paying me for this video and have no say in what I'm about to tell you. Because this is not just another cheap little streaming puck you toss behind your TV. No, this thing is built like it belongs in a real home theater rack. It is heavy, it is overbuilt, and the moment you pick it up, you can tell that Revolution was not trying to make the cheapest box possible. They were trying to make one box that does something that most players still don't. Give you serious local playback and serious streaming in the same machine. And that right there is the whole reason this product exists. Most devices like the Nvidia Shield, Fire TV Stick, Chromecast, Zidu, Dune HD, or even something like the Kaleidoscope tend to lean hard on one way or the other. You either get something great for Netflix, Disney+, Prime Video, and YouTube, or you get something great for Blu-ray rips, Ultra HDs, ISOs, NAS libraries, and collector stuff. The PlayerPro 8K TV is trying to sit in the middle and say why not both. Now before we get into picture quality and playback, let's start where I always like to start. The unboxing. Because with a product like this, the unboxing already tells you a lot about what kind of device you're dealing with. When you open the box, the first thing you'll see is another smaller box sitting on top. And I actually like that because it holds all the extra stuff. So everything feels organized right away instead of just being thrown in there. Inside that top box, you've got the cables and antennas. You get an Ultra HD speed HDMI cable plus multiple power cables for different regions. So wherever you live, you're covered. Honestly, if you ever decide to move to another continent, I guess you can take an extra 10 kilos with you and never be without your Revolution. You also get the Wi-Fi antennas, the IR extender, and AV mounting brackets, which is actually awesome if you've got an AV rack and want to mount this properly. Then you've got two remotes, which sounds a little strange at first, and one of them is actually Homatics brand. But don't worry, I already checked the manual. You don't need to keep using two remotes forever. That second remote is mainly for the initial Android TV setup. And after that, the main remote handles the most important stuff. So before you touch the player itself, you get the feeling that this is packed more like a serious AV component than a cheap little streamer. Then underneath that, you've got the QR code and the Revolution token code. Another nice touch is that you can install Revolution directly on your Windows PC, which makes managing a big library much easier. If you want to change banners, movie posters, categories, and other details, doing that on a PC is simply faster if you have a lot of changes to do. What you do not get is a big printed manual, and honestly, I like that approach a lot. Instead of stuffing a giant book in the box, they keep the user guide online. That means you always have the latest version. And once you get past that, then you get to the main event, the player itself. And the second you take the player itself out of the box, that's when it really clicks. This thing is big, it is heavy, and it feels more like a proper home theater gear than a casual Android box. The official dimensions are 43 by 11 by 34 centimeters, and it weighs about 10 kilos, so this is not one of those little boxes you hide behind your TV and forget about it. It wants to sit there like a real piece of hardware. And now that we've got that out of the box, let's go around it and check everything. Starting at the front, you've got the LCD screen, the power LED, the power on sleep button, a dedicated HDMI switch button, the IR sensor, the concealed internal dual hard drive rack door, and a front USB host port. That HDMI switch button is actually important because it ties directly to the HDMI inputs on the back. So you can switch between external sources right from the front of the unit and the remote control. Then on the back, this is where it starts to feel like a serious home theater. You've got two Wi-Fi antenna connectors, a coaxial digital audio output, analog audio outputs, a USB port dedicated to TV recording, the Android TV reset button, an optical digital audio output, an optional DVB antenna connection, a low noise USB audio output, the HDMI audio only output, the main HDMI 2.1a audio plus video output, HDMI input 1, HDMI input 2, IR in for the included IR extender, the main reset button, Gigabit Ethernet port, a ground connection, the port connector, a voltage selector, the hard on-off power switch, and the fixed RF antenna. So yeah, this thing is absolutely loaded. And this is exactly why the PlayerPro 8K TV doesn't feel like a normal streamer. A normal streaming device gives you power, HDMI, and maybe Ethernet, and that's it. Here you get everything you need to get fully set up. One detail I especially like is that the HDMI labels on the back are printed in a way that makes them much easier to read when you're behind the cabinet. That sounds tiny, but those are exactly the kind of details that tell me this thing is made for real-world AV setups, not just spec sheet flexing. Now let's talk about what makes this version different from the older complaints people had on the PlayerPro 8K TV without the TV version. One of the biggest complaints before was HDMI flexibility. This model now gives you one main HDMI output for video and audio, and one separate audio-only HDMI output and two HDMI inputs for outside devices. In plain English, that means if you've got an older receiver that still sounds amazing but cannot pass modern 4K or 8K HDR videos properly, this box can work around that. Send the picture straight to your TV or projector and send the sound separately to your receiver. And if you have extra HDMI devices, the player can also act like a switch. That is really useful. Now just a quick clarification if you're newer to this world. This box is all about playback and now of course also online streaming. But your movies have to come from somewhere, whether that's the internal drives, USB storage, or NAS setup on your network like I have. That distinction matters because this is a very different kind of product from a basic streamer. And you'll understand why in a bit. That said, I do think some of you might have a complaint right away, and that's the Ethernet cable for a premium player at this price. Maybe they could have thrown in a 2.5 or even a 5 GB Ethernet port instead of the standard Gigabit Ethernet. Now, to be fair, that is more of a transfer speed complaint than a playback complaint. Gigabit is still enough for actual movie streaming from a NAS, but on a box this expensive, faster Ethernet would have made more sense for me too. Moving huge files around and building out a big library is faster. Basically, that's the setup. A giant, expensive, seriously overbuilt media player that wants to replace the usual compromise. Not just a streamer, not just a local file player, but one box that tries to be all of them at once. Now I want to show you what this thing actually feels like in real use, because specs are one thing, but a box like this lives or dies by the experience. So I tested the way I actually use it. First time setup so you guys can see through my 1080p screen capture recorder, then real viewing on a 200-inch white wall on a more serious projector setup using the HDMI Titan Noir Max, which I also covered separately on the channel. And yes, that video also includes the Arvolution PlayerPro 8K TV in the setup. So if you want to check that one out, I'll leave the link in the description. So when setting this up, of course, this device wants to be seen. I actually placed it right underneath my HDMI Titan Noir Max on top of the projector case, and for some reason it fits just perfectly there. Stacked up like that, it looked absolutely beautiful. Then came the first time setup. You plug everything in, power it on, and the player goes through the initial startup setup. After that, you land on the quick setup where you choose your language and network access. Once you got set up, you want to open our video, and this is where the whole system starts coming alive. You create an account or log in, choose your language, and enter the Arvolution token code, and then you're in. So then comes the part most people actually care about, adding your content. Now, if you've got a NAS, a PC, external drives, or internal hard drives, it supports SMB network browsing, and the player can also expose itself on your network through its IP address. That means adding media is pretty straightforward. Now, our video itself, that's where the magic happens. The software scrapes the collection automatically, starts pulling in the covers, artwork, metadata, banners, trailers, cast info, and all of that. A bit like Plex in the sense that it builds a beautiful media wall, but the amount of direct playback control and hardware level tweaking here is a whole different level. You can't even compare it with each other. And I know a lot of you will probably say, oh, I have Plex and I can do the same. And I can tell you this from experience because I often also test Plex, so I know the difference. Yes, Plex is very good. This is different. It's a whole different level. And that being said, I want to quickly walk you through the settings because honestly, this is where the box really starts to separate itself from a simple Android box running Plex. This thing gives you a ridiculous amount of actual control. No fake marketing control, real control. Now, I'm not going to sit here and name every single setting one by one because there are just so many. And that's exactly the point. This thing gives you so much amount of control: audio, video, HDR, Dolby Vision, AI, subtitles, playback behavior, output settings, library behavior, startup options. There is just a crazy amount you can tweak here. And for me, that's where a box like this really shines. Plex can play files, sure, but when you get into the actual settings and see how much control you have over the experience, that's when you realize this is playing in a completely different league. That's also why I think comparing this to some Android box running Plex is just not fair. Once you get in here and start looking around, you quickly realize this thing gives you way more flexibility, way more control, and way more room to fine-tune the experience to your own setup. Now, we've went through the settings and I'm gonna show you in a bit how the picture quality looks like, but before that, let's go ahead and set up Android TV, and this is where you need that second remote control for the initial setup. After that, you basically don't need the Homatics remote anymore because it's really just there to get the Android TV site up and running. And honestly, this part also really surprised me, and I finally understood why this box comes with two remotes and why one of them is a Homatic remote. Arvolution's own explanation is that this player combines its main high-end media player chip with a separate Google-certified Android TV chip based on the Homatics brand, and the two operate parallel inside the same chassis. So when you switch over to Android TV and then switch back to our video, you're really kind of moving between two systems in one box. And that also explains the bigger trade-off here. The main Arvolution side is built around the hardware and playback focus they wanted, but the Android TV side needs the Google certified approach to properly handle that streaming ecosystem. Personally, I think it's a bit of a bummer. I would have loved to use the Google streaming apps on that high-end media chip that's inside the Arvolution player itself, but I guess this is the only way they could actually do this to get certified. Now, it's not a deal breaker for me, but it's worth mentioning. Now, after Android TV is set up, you can log in your Netflix, Disney Plus, and you can see that it supports 4K and all the high-end picture quality settings. Now, picture quality on the R video side, and I'm going to be careful here because with a product like this, it's really easy to drift into pure marketing language. But the best way I can describe this is the PlayerPro 8K TV gives you the feeling that the signal path was taken seriously. Arvolution talks a lot about TCXO clock, the Dolby VS10 engine, the Linear power supply, the Torioldo transformer, and the upgraded internals. And on paper, that all sounds very impressive and very expensive, but in actual use, that might not mean a lot. So what I have noticed more than anything was how stable and clean the whole experience felt, especially with proper local files and projector use. Motion felt composed, playback felt deliberate, and the whole thing had that high-end home theater appliance vibe instead of a cheap Android box trying its best. And here's the part I really want streaming-only viewers to understand. The big difference is not magic, it's compression. Netflix says 4K streaming can use up to 7 GB per hour, which works roughly around 15.6 megabytes. Ultra HD Blu-rays, by comparison, supports up to 108 megabytes on 66 GB discs or 128 megabytes on 100 GB discs. That does not mean every single screenshot looks bad. And it does also not mean that every local file automatically looks amazing. But it does mean local high bitrate sources have far more room for fine textures, cleaner gradients, fewer compressions. And I've also explained this on my Titan Noir Max video, so check it out and you can also see the difference there. Because once you move up to a very large screen or projection, you will see the difference a lot. But then my personal opinion on top of that is actually very simple. Now, I know not everyone is going to agree with me, and that's fine. But to my eyes, the difference between watching a Netflix stream and watching a proper movie remix file is huge. And I do really mean huge. A remix file, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's basically as close as you get to keeping the full quality from the disc. And when you compare that to a compressed stream, especially on a big screen, we're talking a file from 100 gigabyte versus 25 gigabytes on a Netflix on the same movie. You gotta know it's 4 times smaller, so it comes from the details. Again, that's my opinion. You can take it or leave it, but for me, the cap is absolutely noticeable. And audio is another area where this box is clearly aiming much higher than the average streamer. The official page and the guide pushes Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, Audio 3D, LPCM, and proper multi-channel support hard. And they also make a big deal out of the TCXO clock and the internal power design. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you some magical fairy tale that a transformer alone changes your life. But I will say this, if you've got a real surround system set up and you actually care about clean, reliable, high-end playback, this box feels like it's built for that audience in a way that mainstream streamers simply aren't. But I do want to keep this grounded because this is not a product for everybody. If all you do is watch Netflix, YouTube, and Disney Plus on a regular TV, you absolutely do not need this. It is too expensive, too niche, and too overbuilt for that use. And there are still a couple of annoyances here. I still wish the networking was faster, and I still think one amazing remote would have been cleaner than 2. Now, what I really like about the PlayerPro 8K TV is that it feels like an actual Android TV streamer and local playback monster in one box. That is the biggest win here. You've got Android TV side for the big streaming apps, but then you've also got the serious collector side with our video, NAS playback, dual hard drive base, full Blu-ray, and Ultra HD menu supports. Picture quality is one of the biggest strengths here. When you feed this high quality local files, it looks incredible. Now for the things I don't like, first, the remote. Even if you mostly just use the main Revolution remote after setup, it still feels a bit too simple and a bit too cheap for a product at this price. The rubber buttons are okay, but sometimes they feel like they need a firmer press than they should. I personally would have loved a bigger, more premium, more metal feeling remote with more customizable buttons. Second, while I really do love our video and the overall home menu concept, I still think there's plenty of room to improve the speed, smoothness, and the overall polish of the interface. Compare that to something like Zidu, the home menu and poster wall can look a bit cleaner on that and feel a bit snappier here. So I really hope Revolution keeps optimizing the UI or renewing the whole style and the loading speed and the responsiveness of banners and movie posters. And finally, there's the dual system approach. I totally understand why they did it. They need to get that Google certified chip, but I still did wish that the main high-end Revolution chip could have been fully Google certified also, instead of this split approach. Again, not a deal breaker, but definitely one of those things where I hope future versions can tighten the whole experience even more. So who is this really for? This is for the person who has a NAS, a big movie library, a projector, or a serious TV setup, the person who actually cares about HDMI routing, the person who knows Blu-ray menus, remix files, Dolby Vision files, and knows what Atmos tracks are, the person who wants one machine that feels like the center of the home theater instead of another streaming gadget. And that's why, in my opinion, the PlayerPro 8K TV is not really an Nvidia Shield alternative. That's too small to describe the difference. Yes, both devices can do media playback, yes, both can do streaming, but this thing is aiming at a different buyer. This is trying to be the premium hybrid centerpiece for a serious home theater, not just a good general purpose box. So my final opinion is the Revolution PlayerPro 8K TV is expensive, very expensive, and it still has a few frustrations that stop it from being perfect, but it also does something really rare. It makes the collector world and the streaming world live in the same machine without completely ruining either sides. And when you combine that with the heavy chassis, the dual drive base, the dual HDMI outputs, the HDMI inputs, the R video experience, and the overall build for a home theater people design, it becomes very easy to understand why someone would fall absolutely in love with this thing. Personally, I love it. Now, I don't live in some giant Hollywood level cinema room. I don't have a dream mansion setup, but even in a more normal environment, I can still appreciate what this thing is trying to do. And honestly, that might be the most impressive thing about it, because while this player absolutely belongs in a dedicated home theater, it still manages to feel special even before you get there. So yes, the PlayerPro 8K TV is a niche and it's expensive, and maybe the best way to end this is that this box is not for everyone. It is a box for the person who has been waiting for someone to finally stop making them choose between streaming convenience and collected great playback. So that's the Revolution PlayerPro 8K TV, folks. Now, if you want to learn more, the links are in the description. Check it out for yourself or buy one. Now, I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm out.